you've written in your Business Spectator column this week about the referendum the UK voters face in June on the question of whether Britain should remain in the European Union. As a German-born economist who's worked in the UK, what are your views?
I'm in two minds about that, because I'm a German-born economist, but I'm also a very Anglophile and classical liberal economist. So the German in me would actually like to see Britain stay part of the European Union, whereas the classical liberal Anglophile in me can completely understand why a lot of Brits want to depart from the European Union and don't want to be bound to Brussels anymore.
And would a Europe without Britain be a different Europe?
Of course it would be, because it would be a Europe no longer influenced by British classical liberal ideas, by beliefs in free markets and competition and limited government, but it would be a more French Europe, a more dirigiste Europe, a more planned Europe. It would be more Brussels and less London, and that would be a bad thing for the European Union. Because let's face it, so far there are only two countries that really have a more or less liberal outlook on the world, and two countries are Britain on the one hand and Germany on the other. Germany, of course, not the most natural place for economic liberalism, but after 1945, the auto-liberal tradition in Germany, they had a strong belief in markets, and they were the natural allies for Britain in shaping the European Union. Had it not been for Britain and Germany, you can imagine what the French, the Spanish, the Italians would have done, because they've had very different perspectives on economic policy. So yes, a European Union without Britain would almost certainly be a very different European Union.
And what about for Britain? Will Brexit have the dire consequences that many are forecasting?
Well, it will be messy. It will be a prolonged period of renegotiations on trade, on access to the European common market, and it will probably take a couple of years until that's decided. So it will be a messy affair, taking Britain out of it, unscrambling the egg, if you like. But in the long term, I think the prospects of having greater control over Britain's own affairs, having control over its borders, and actually able to do its own economic policy settings again, that's a positive. And there are plenty of examples, of course, of countries outside the European Union that are also doing well, even some European ones. So think of Norway, think of Switzerland. They are closely linked, integrated into the European common market without being members of the EU. If that's what Britain can achieve in the end, it will probably be a much better Britain.
What about the argument that Britain will have less influence over Europe outside of the European Union? Does that weigh on your mind?
Not necessarily, because I mean, what does Britain really want to have influence on? Not on the Eurozone, obviously, because it's not even part of that. Other things, in international affairs and international security arrangements, Britain can probably have as much influence, if not more, outside the European Union. It's still a member of the Security Council, it is still a member of NATO, it has a lot of influence on these fronts, it is well connected, of course, through the Commonwealth around the world. So I think Britain outside the European Union can still be a very influential player in international affairs.
So to use an English expression on this question, you have a bob each way.
Well, yes, but that's not a position, as you know, for most economists, because we always argue on the one and on the other.
Thank you.
Thank you.